Trams rolled fitfully over oven-hot tracks. Listless taxi drivers barely had the energy to toot their horns. Conversations she overheard were brief, words used sparingly, dry mouths making speech awkward. It was too much of an effort for anyone to argue. The sun hid behind the smoky shroud smothering the city. The smell of ash was pervasive. Standing on the St Kilda Bridge, Robbie thought Melbourne looked like an exhausted city close to the edge of collapse. She crossed the road and headed towards the Melbourne Convention and Exhibition Centre, but known to locals as Jeff's Shed, after the state premier whose baby it was. Its 3 adjacent buildings sat parallel to the Yarra's riverbank and faced the Crown Casino complex on the other side. Dragging her feet up the 20-odd steps into the cool foyer was an effort. Once inside, she paused to catch her breath and drink the last warm dregs from her water bottle, having quickly dispatched her coffee already. Her destination was the Goldfields Auditorium at the far end of the building, where the last day of the conference was in progress. In the auditorium's cool, spacious vestibule, Robbie threw her rucksack under the reception counter. Conference staff, who were busy sorting out issues with early morning delegates, glanced at her and smiled, then returned to the problems they were dealing with. Some of them thought she was one of the exhibition centre's trainee managers. The rest didn't really have time to care who she was. No one knew she was a detective, working undercover. And no one knew she was there because she was responsible for stuffing up her last murder investigation.
"Condescending bunch of bastards,"
Superintendent Ted Hobbs had uttered to the 4 walls in his office after he put the phone down, even though Robbie was standing directly in front of him.
"ASIO's got the jitters. They're worried about the high number of visas being approved for Muslim participants at the disaster conference."
Robbie had read the papers. The federal government had been doing its best to avoid negative public opinion around its border control policies, and had expressed concern over rising Islamic fundamentalism in neighbouring countries.
"We've been requested to assign an experienced officer to attend the conference. Undercover, of course. That's you. You should consider yourself lucky, girlie, that it's only a week. And frankly, it'll be good for you to get out of this place for a while."
Robbie stood there with a gaping hole where her stomach had been. "Might I remind you, sir, that the internal investigation exonerated me and my team. This is a totally unwarranted punishment. It implies I'm dirty." Ted Hobbs pooh-poohed her retort.
"No, it doesn't. Look, they've stressed it's considered a low-level assignment, but one that's critical for public safety. I've reassured them that the Victoria Police can handle it. You better not let me down."
Robbie had accepted that she was accountable for the recent murder investigation debacle, and that there would be consequences, but this was a professional slap in the face, assigning an experienced DI to do a babysitting job. She nodded and walked out. In the Goldfields Auditorium, Robbie joined more than 300 delegates attending the conference. Delegates included United Nations staff, World Health Organization representatives, consultants, climate change activists, NGOs, refugee advocates, and technical specialists, all hoping to learn from each other and contribute their own expertise to fresh thinking. Jane Duckmanton, CEO of the Australian organisation Waterworks, took Robbie aside and explained the role of the UN in disaster relief.
"Essentially, it's a job for the boys' club. Always has been. It's who you know, not what you know."
Jane's fair hair was loosely twisted in a roll at the back of her head. She wore no makeup, and Robbie placed her age at about 50. Though her face was unlined, it hinted that she had seen much, and her lively hazel eyes suggested she had coped with it all. Her wide, friendly mouth displayed neat, even teeth. The way Jane tilted her head when she was speaking amused Robbie, and the more animated she became about a subject, the more her head tilted. "And," quipped a delegate from Sri Lanka,